kind of like a, I think people like Mike because I'm kind of a unique kind of character.
And
I love like
you just see how games of possession is more intense, how they mean more. I think the U.S. is going to all of win.
Hello and welcome back to a very special episode of Nothing But Respect. I am joined by Patrick Redford, and we have our lawyer, Sportello, here to tackle this is a lot of people, this is what they want to hear from us, right? Like this is the NBR beat. So the Illinois state legislature is considering an unprecedented tax on every bet placed on online apps like FanDuel or DraftKings or ESPN Bet. And this would hurt sports fans in Illinois and potentially drive them toward like illegal black market betting.
Oh no.
And so I guess I'll just kick it to you, Patrick. Like, what do we do about this? What do we do about this this per bet tax in Illinois? What do we do as a media entity to stop this?
Now, I've read the critiques that said the protesters on January 6th, 2021 may have gone too far. Mm-hmm. But, I was not subject to the same sort of persecution that they were. But now that my rights as someone who has been to Illinois and has gambled and has placed some parlays are being infringed upon, I feel that we should ask our lawyer here, like, where is the capital of Illinois? And how do we do something about this? How do we
January 6 leg parlay?
Yeah.
Welcome to Nothing But Externalities. the hipster cultural elite public policy podcast. Today we've got the boring parts of the Diddy trial. We've got...
save it for the tort reform segment.
Yeah. I'm joking. We do have Sportello, but we're not talking about a very confusing gambling legislature that I read a little bit about and then gave up on reading. But no, we're talking about the now famous mega viral NBA swag crisis. But we're also going to talk about a lot of things. But Jack, I guess you're public now. I'll bleep it. How are you doing?
Do either. Yeah, you can call me Ak, you can call me Jack, but whatever you do, you better address me with respect. Basically, the deal is I'm fucking famous now. I'm a famous blogger, and the kind of like the way you can compare eras. I got famous in the link suppression era. This is like me going SGA numbers with hand checking. So when you speak to me, put some fucking respect on my name. The price of a feature is going up. However, you guys have been so good to me just kind of throughout my budding career, my road to fame. And so my new rule where I'm charging $25,000 for a walkthrough does not apply to you guys. I have, however, without informing you or without your advance consent, agreed to offload the speaker cost to some advertisers because I do now not appear for free. So before we get into the show, I just want to say this is Nothing But Respect, the Sportello 5th episode, brought to you by our friends at Polymarket. Polymarket. Will Chet say the word during the group interview? You know that word. What comes first, a Pacers win or an on-court soy face? All that and more at Polymarket. Polymarket, it's not gambling, it's predictions. Also brought to you by our friends at Hims. Hims, true coolness lasts the longest. And finally, the good folks at Klarna, whether it's Chrome Hearts or private flights from Teterboro to wherever you go to in Indianapolis, you can pay it off in 4 interest-free installments. Klarna. All right, guys, how we doing?
Oh, thank you, Ak. Thank you for blessing us. I'm glad we could make the numbers work to get you to come on.
Yeah, exactly. I never want to actually put my friends out, so.
And the Kalshi people are not going to be happy to hear this. I had placed several parlays that you were going to say meat off in your first remarks, and now I owe them $10,000. So
yeah, I had a
sort
very
of a tough break there.
Very, very long shot. It paid out like 100x on a Red Scare appearance, actually. So I guess that didn't hit, but we're happy to have you.
That's what the Polymarket sponsorship is for. We can keep making the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the call sheet, Sportello, Dasha, retweet, 35-cent market paid off handsomely. And now we can finance the show for another year.
You're a famous blogger. You had some shit pop off. You assayed the soil. You found that intensive aura farming has depleted the topsoil of nutrients, magnesium, things of that nature. And you sent basically what amounts to like a legal form letter to the Monsantos of the world about sort of the NBA swag crisis. Before we get into like the substance of the blog, which we talked about last week, but both of us thought was great. Like,
Yep.
Thank you.
You know, aside from having to deal with various sponsors, how does it feel to be a famous blogger?
It's hilarious because you find out that the only people who like really, I joked on Twitter the other day, like the whole white people don't say good blog, they say Free Darko is back. Like, the appetite for NBA blogging seemed to be most voracious among 40-year-old men, which is really funny because I guess we can get into this, but one of the main critiques the piece got was basically like the unk card, for lack of a better word, like you're too old to actually see what's going on. The fact that you even thought to write this means you should be in a home, et cetera, et cetera. And I would say that the most public supporters all being on the wrong side of 40 didn't necessarily help my case that this wasn't just pure generational hating. But it was cool. I mean, it's cool to see things circulate. Feels completely fucking random, and also like it feels like specifically only the NBA part of the blog itself blew up. But I don't know. The people do yearn for, I think, goofy, half thought out basketball writing.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing that I liked about it so much, is that it was written and like achieved this sort of escape velocity, because like we've just talked so much about how like the dominant mode of content is like me talking like this and then the cartoon words pop up below me, and that just all feels so ephemeral. And just on a meta level, before we even get into the take, I just enjoyed that, like you said, in the link suppression era, a never hungover link did this. Like, it's great.
Yeah, it makes you realize how much motion like Jay Kang still has. Like, that's a powerful cosign in this town.
No, the two things I would add, 'cause I agree with all of that. And I wonder if you think about this, Ak, but like I saw this as the third part of your series on NBA coolness. I thought Aura was number one, the LaMelo vape blog was number two, and then this was sort of like part three of a tracking of coolness. And so I highly suggest anybody who's just read the first one to go back, because it is all in conversation with each other, and it's kind of this stuff. Like I was going to ask, like, how did you start thinking about this blog? But I kind of feel like you've just been thinking about it all season. Like even our informal texts have just been talking about this swag crisis, and I agree that the what was so fun about it was like how clearly and well distilled it was. And then the one other thing is, Patrick, to the point of like the words popping up, there's so much like dumb ideas written or talked about dumbly or ephemerally, like thoughtlessly, I should say. And I mean thoughtlessly kind of neutrally, but it was nice to tackle like kind of like dumb idea extremely seriously.
Yeah. I mean,
you know, like that I think is what that's what people, that was fun. Like that is what is fun about sports in a certain sense, is that it is a low stakes way to tackle high stakes kind of thing. So the form met the function in that way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, I don't know. I think something I've been feeling quite resentful of recently. I know you guys actually talked about the whole like, is Substack cool panic, but I do think that when blogs kind of hit escape velocity, everyone seems so excited to be reading a blog again, and yet
Totally.
Substack has kind of achieved its own like logic and incentive system and like house style. I think we talk about a lot of this too, but like such that most Substacks actually don't feel like blogs. Like they feel like, whether they're like long form tweets or I don't know, they're kind of their own thing. And so I do think, yeah, we can all strive to the extent that we are blogging. I think, Patrick, you do this a lot as well, but just to be kind of, whether more serious about goofy things or goofier about more serious things, it is refreshing. But I guess to your point, Harry, I agree that I think this is a piece that's in keeping with a lot of other things I've written, and I specifically resented the Unk allegations because I had just been on record so vehemently defending LaMelo's like dead-eyed Zoomer-brained antics. You asked like in the ROS about what the genesis for thinking of this was, and I think specifically the reason I decided I wanted to write something like this was last year I had joked in a kind of like tweet that popped off in its own way, but that basically the Western Conference playoffs were Aura versus European Slav Menace, and the Eastern Conference playoffs were just like a mess. And so like throughout these playoffs, I was kind of like reassessing and taking stock of that hypothesis. And, you know, Aura did vanquish the European Slav Menace, right?
That's right.
Jokic and Luka went down, and we were lined up for the Aura Bowl. And it was actually watching the Aura Bowl that made me have this kind of, I don't know, it shook me to my core because it challenged my priors. Because it was only in watching the Aura Bowl that I had this moment of like grappling with how incomplete of a concept Aura is, because I was like, oh my God, Shea isn't cool. You know, it was watching Shea in contrast to Ant, like grifting for fouls and doing the joint interviews and just like being surrounded by those fucking guys, you know, like just like the Jalen Williamses of the world, that it felt like the scene in The Big Short where you realize how many, you know,
The B's are C's and the C's are fucked.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my goodness, Shea is not cool to me. And so that I think was kind of like the seed from which this piece sprung. Plus this kind of like constant teeth gnashing every time I had to watch Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart.
Ryan Reynolds doing the like swipe through as he throws the Jenga piece into the garbage. Trying to draw an and one on his quant.
I mean, the thing I liked about the story so much is that, like, sort of like what we were saying earlier, it's like not really about like basketball or like this sort of diagnosis of Halliburton, Brunson, and Shea, and like the specific ways that they try and mostly fail to be cool, is like a means to an end of trying to define this like larger order question of like what cool is. I mean, you would basically like the swag crisis, I think, is like a good way to put it. Can you just like talk through sort of the process of how you arrived?
Yeah, I mean,
like just even asking like that question, like setting it up.
For sure. And like I do want to clarify that point. Like the basketball is so good right now. And I think we'll talk about this later.
Right.
And to the extent that people I think there was some like negative pushback about people being like, this is exactly what's wrong with basketball media right now, which I love the idea of like me being part of basketball media. Like,
The problem is,
like,
yeah.
I get Flavio Tranquillo's vote next year and just like, but people were kind of like, everyone wants to focus on the negative and tear down the game. And I don't think I was doing that, but I also don't think I affirmatively clarified that I think the game's in a great spot right now. And I have sympathy towards people who are like reflexively safeguarding basketball, right? Because I do think, like, especially with the Midwest finals and whatnot, like there is going to be a lot of room for the like Ethan Sherwood Strausses of the world to be in really bad faith, say the NBA's in trouble. I don't endorse that whatsoever. I specifically was concerned with like the NBA as a site of like a few things, but like mainly image production, right? And like this kind of like generator of iconography, or to like put it less obliquely, like this cool factory, right? Like, and
Because the best basketball players have always been kind of cool in this way. Like Michael Jordan is like this just totally like unmatchable example of like this synthesis of like athletics and branding and like narrative all in this like one complete package. And like,
absolutely,
when people talk about the next Jordan, like that specifically is what they're talking about, is this like this ability to transcend basketball.
Yes. And like that's like I think I kind of hinted at this at the end of the Aura piece too, where I was kind of which another example of like a blog about something really silly that I tried to treat seriously because I thought it'd be kind of funny. But at the end of that piece I talked through a little bit about like what function is Aura as a concept serving. And the kind of bet I put forward was that there's this like among NBA fans, this libidinal investment in specifically producing like conventionally cool, swaggy, if not American, then Anglophone players, right? And that Aura was like a specific response to, you know, Giannis, who I find just kind of like illegible for a number of reasons, and Victor, but really specifically Luka and Jokic. And I think what I tried to get at in this piece was this broader societal sense that in our era of kind of like repetition, again, to go back to the B's are C's and the C's are fucked, like I think for a long time, our primary mode of image production has been this like very recursive, mimetic, deeply referential system whereby cool is predicated on recycling what was cool 20 years ago, then 10 years ago, then 5 years ago. And the only thing that seems to be in flux is the period of time that the recursive cycle kind of operates on. And the NBA playoffs felt to me like this really stark example of how pretty soon, if that's your only generator of cool, the house of cards is going to fall down. And like that is why I kind of, again, tongue-in-cheekingly incorporated these other two, I think, pillars of what, at least in my algorithmic feeds, were like the buzzy stories of the last few months, which was, you know, the crisis of basic in the West Village and this like broader story about Zin being kind of how young men and young women take nicotine in. And they all felt like they were getting at something similar, which is that when you run out of something that's like sui generis as a image producer, very quickly what you get is copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it sort of disintegrates into this like nihilistic nothingness.
No, I think that's well put. One of the things it makes me think of is like how we might be reaching a bit more. Well, how there's this long trend, obviously, of gatekeeping, of kind of outsourcing gatekeeping to algorithms, and thus sort of like lowering the gates, right? And that at various levels, people have sounded the alarms on this stuff. Like I remember in college, there was when I was in college, there were certain types of people who knew about when new emerging artists would come out with an album, right? Maybe they would like be reading fucking Pigeons and Planes or whatever. Or
I was excited to see what you would say there after that comma.
Checking the two dope boys, whatever, refreshing the hype machine every morning, which itself was probably an algorithm, or was certainly an algorithm. But anyway, but then over the time when I was in college, Apple and Spotify would start releasing like fresh find playlists. And so what do you do when your taste is being, when the kind of difficult process of acquiring taste is being outsourced, whatever. But that was just this sort of thing that that was like a blip, right? As more and more of that has come into culture, it's like the steam is boiling, like, or the boiling water is creating the steam shootout and the high-pitched noise is coming. And I do think that one of the reasons why people related to the blog so much was it did feel like this underbelly of outsourcing taste to weird algorithms was like now officially in our face. Mm-hmm. Like, God damn it. The athletes that were the mainstay of like of like monolithic mainstream American culture, like now they're like the algorithms too. And I think that is another reason why the piece, relate, or like what connected with me. And I think on a certain level, there's a sense of people are just so tired of like what is shorthanded as like slop.
Yes, and I think there's what I think resonated about the piece too, and like what I wanted to get at when I was writing it was like exactly what you were saying. This feeling, it's not dissimilar to the like plot mechanisms of the most recent Mission Impossible, where the AI, the climax is the AI finally getting the American nukes, right? Where I do think there's a sense that the NBA represented to me and I guess to others who resonate with the piece, this like vague notion that there were still adults in the room somewhere, even if like adults in this metaphor was 23-year-old kids. Like there was someone who at some level was insulated from the slot machine and capable of generating their own cool because of their having, frankly, something better to do with their life than staring at their fucking phone all day, right? Like there's this level of access to nice things, and in the lower A sense of the word, aura, right? Like there's this confluence of factors that predisposes the best NBA players to be fucking cool, and so when they are so lame, it's jarring.
Yeah, it's like even Shea. When Shea was sort of coming up, he was like, he was trying to be cool, like in a very deliberate way with the outfits. Like he was such a fashion guy, his like stupid fucking Instagram captions, but like it was sort of the self-awareness that was like annoying about it. And the same thing with Halliburton, like is a former podcaster guy. And like, I think something I was thinking about as I was reading the story was like, you remember that I think it was a Times opinion piece that was like, we all know too much about each other.
Yes.
And I think everyone is so aware of like everything that is happening and the opinions about the opinions and like the right way to read things. And we have like no way to express that. Like the ability to read and like come up with takes and conceive of information moves like orders of magnitude faster than like the basketball. And like, not that was ever like the main thing, but like everything, it's just like there's sort of an incompatibility of speeds, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The Shea fit pick thing, I think, is a good example of something you talked about in the PSOC, which is this idea that no matter what, to somebody you're basic because of the kind of how everything is immediately my friend Ron and I talk about this as type of guyism, where you are sort of immediately turned into a type of guy if you do something like 3 times on the internet, or like a starter pack is what you mentioned it as. And my experience with Shea's fit picks is when he first started doing it, it was very cool to me. Like, because I liked that he was putting genuine effort and wearing all these avant-garde outfits, but then kind of culture caught up and saturated itself, and he then was just like one of 10 people doing it, and the like kind of novelty of it started to phase and it became basic, and then now he just sort of like is completely in that milieu, and he might just like be. And we actually teased like on one of the early episodes of NBR about Kyle Kuzma retiring from outfits. Like that might be the only proper exit is to drop out. Like,
well, I was gonna say like this cuts against, because one of the things I made fun of Halliburton for was his shitty outfits, and so like this is gonna cut against that. But what are we if not a bundle of contradictions? I do think that like Kuzma's instructive because the fit pickification of the league. One of the things I got at in the piece was this sense that like risk feels like it's disappearing, right? Like people are taking fewer risks. I think it's the flip side of we all know too much about one another, as we all also know too much about the possible paths that an act might conjure into being, right? And just
we've run up against the parameters, yeah.
Exactly, and it just feels like there is no unknown, right? And obviously that's not true, but it's how things feel. And you look at someone like Kuzma, who is by no sense of the word cool, but there is something I do have to appreciate about the fact that so many of his fit picks are just roundly mocked and clowned. Like it's almost like without the fact that I can't think of a single SGA fit that has been shit on.
Right.
Feels like obviously there is something remarkably safe going on, because like you can't hit 100% of the time, right? If you're truly
That's a very
actually
good
shooting.
point.
You know, it's almost like he's grifting for free throws in his picks.
The last time I remember anyone making fun of him was when he posed at the Cybertruck too.
Yes. Yeah.
God,
Which is like that's algorithm bait. That's the exact same thing. It's like he's just creating a good position and like monetizing that in the same way that he'll like get past a defender and then like fall over or whatever.
Exactly. And in one situation, it's because his body is built a certain way and he's able to move incredibly quickly. And the other one, it's because he's hot. Like it really all is downstream of that.
Yeah, that's really funny. I was going to move into talking about a little bit more about how the piece went, but Patrick, did you have any other final thoughts?
I was just trying to think like what specifically about the era that came before the like kind of pre-pandemic, like late Steph, sort of like Giannis, Slob Menace, like what that transition era is sort of exciting to me. If you think about like the eternal lineage of NBA cool, because if we just like start from like, okay, Jordan retires and then Kobe does this like really sort of tragic, like second time as farce, total imitation, stealing all of his moves. And like people love that. Like everyone loves Kobe and holds him up as the exemplar. And like you got into this in the Ball Don't Stop piece, which is like how I first started reading you. But like there's it's a real tragedy that all the 20-year-olds now think Kobe is like the coolest fucking guy to ever exist. And he's like the second person to do everything he's ever done.
And it drove me up, not to interrupt you, but
No, please.
I had kids in my mentions telling me like, hey, the guy you idolized wasn't so cool either. And he was, newsflash, he was a rapist and he wasn't very swag. And I was like, how fucking dare you imply that I think Kobe Bryant is cool? That was like the one time that a critique got under my skin because I was like, no, Kobe was always a loser.
Well, and then LeBron, people have always thought LeBron is lame and weird. And like the coolest LeBron has ever been when he's been totally unkified in like the Lakers era. When everyone's like, oh, the Taco Tuesday shit, he's so goofy. He's like this like goofy ass dad. And he was like really struggled with his like public persona and public image because he had this expectation of like, you're just going to do what Kobe did. You're going to be the next Jordan. And it's not so much that he rejected that, but it's like the paradigm just totally didn't fit with him.
Yeah.
And Steph never had those expectations, but like he was such an interesting character because his game was so cool, but off the court, he just like put the chinos on and like lived in Walnut Creek and like loved golf, God, and his wife. And it was like not interesting.
Benson Boone,
Benson Boone.
And so maybe because the point I'm making is that because those guys had like such a swag vacuum that makes the Giannis, Jokic, Luka, like it puts them in a harsh contrast where like, it's like, oh, you guys are the best players in the league after the LeBron Steph dynasty. And like, you're not even cool. Like, and I think that happens at the same time as like this sort of media consensus machine we were talking about earlier, like truly spins into form, which is basically how you get the like apocalyptic stakes of the Orable.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I like to think of that era, which again is not an era I find particularly cool when you mine individual personalities, but like they're basically like the normcore era. Like I always think of like those fucking glasses and just like if you ever want to ask yourself like, was LeBron cool? Just look at what he's wearing in the decision. Dude. You know what I mean? Like these guys dressed like shit and they looked so goofy. Yeah. But I also think a lot of this isn't necessarily their faults, and some of it is. Like, I think what you still had in that era was these idiosyncrasies among the top guys about like what the possible options were. Like, I would not deign to call this cool, but there was something risky about the fact that like, I know by now we are in the second time as farce era of it, but like KD going to war with people on Twitter, right?
I had the same thought.
It was, and I think it's like quite frankly lame now when everyone is just like, oh, Kevin is tweeting, like, but it is risky and crazy and kind of unprecedented that someone of his stature was that preoccupied with what people thought about him, specifically because there was no precedent for it. Like, you know, people have analogized it to what if like Michael Jordan would just go downstairs to the bar and argue with people who said that, you know, he wasn't the greatest ever. And it's like, yeah, that would be insane. And what Kevin did was insane. And I think you also have these, you know, another guy I think of not as particularly cool, but as someone who doesn't feel like today would allow him to come into being is James Harden, who at the height of his powers was basically an alcoholic cokehead. Like he was doing the type of shit that your dad tells you the Mets pitchers did in the 80s, right? Like he was going to strip clubs every single night. And he was, I mean, you know, when his drug of choice became lean with the Nets, that was his downfall. But during the Coke and Duce era, like he was an MVP. Like that's crazy. And so I don't think the generation before us was particularly cool. And I don't think that what's happening here is just old heads saying back in my day. But I do think what you are seeing in the league, as with elsewhere, is this kind of flattening of experience and narrowing of the range of what's possible. Because even now, if someone was to go Twitter fingers, it would be, you're doing the KD, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's almost as if the terrain has been so thoroughly mined that now it's like, what comes next?
That's why the farming metaphor is good, because you really can farm the same soil only so many times.
Yeah, exactly. And you do need like a swagless era. Perhaps this is necessary.
Right. That the Dust Bowl is actually good. It's going to wash away. The swag Dust Bowl will wash away and fertilize the ground for you know, the Thompson twins to like get truly esoteric fits off. Two quick other things that made me think of is, one is the as I was thinking about this, and I was like, God, we need a superstar who just does, who I literally had the thought, who doesn't have the internet. And I, of course, immediately thought of James Harden. He don't have internet. And I was like, okay, I guess it's not just that, because if James Harden ostensibly does not have internet, he still was, he wasn't like so third rail that like, whatever. Your read is, I think, correct, which is like, he was just, he didn't want any eyeballs on him because what he was doing was so fucking insane and would grounds to terminate his contract. Like
the irony of that era of guys is that Kevin Durant's "I'm me, I do me, and I chill" actually only applies to James Harden. KD is none of those three things. He's neither him, nor does he do him, nor does he chill.
I think there's like, I was just thinking about this. I think there's sort of an element of wish fulfillment, because all these guys we're talking about have net worths in like the 9 figures. And when you're watching someone like Tyrese or Shea play basketball and like just live out in the world, there's almost an element of like, what would I do if I could be that? It's like you can never experience that level of like material power. And so it's like, you want to see someone just like take advantage of it and enjoy it, but in like a respectable sort of way, or like basically just treat that that like rare human experience and just like show it for like at whatever it's worth. And so someone like KD comes across as very sympathetic, because it's like he has all that power and like rejects it in a certain way to like look at his phone in his condo in Phoenix on like a Thursday night and like get these tweets off. And then someone like Harden is then great, because it's like, oh yeah, if I had if some people had $100 million, they would also like do the strip club and Coke thing. And like the Shea and Halliburton phenomenon, I keep using those two, but Brunson is like maybe the worst offender of all this.
Yeah.
But like those guys sit in this uncanny valley where it's like, you have all this money and you're not even fucking doing anything cool. Like you're just like living a normal life. Like what's the point of that? Which is like maybe an unfair expectation to put on them, and like says more about like the nature of fame than anything. But like maybe that's what we want, you know?
Well, they're also not. Oh, go ahead.
Oh wait, you go. No, you go, Harry.
They're also not totally mastering the form anymore in the way that somebody like Jared McCain is. Jared McCain has a much more clear understanding about how to be famous online, in that like he's doing the dances and stuff. These guys are just like posting photos and then posing in photos or posing in videos that will be eventually screenshots in a way that if you are like putting on your conspiracy hat, you maybe know that they know that. They just don't fully have they're not. I mean, they're like us. They're like in between being kind of like completely internet fluid. Well, I guess because you're 17, you are internet fluid.
For the record, guys, I'm fucking 13 years old. And I don't like to show my face because my middle school teachers would get mad at me, but I have the Boston haircut. I have hit 4 different vapes in the first 30 minutes of this episode. Yeah. One thing I do have to say about Brunson, my friend, I remember when Brunson took that pay cut, I was sick to my stomach. It felt like the same level of like the in baseball, the Dodgers kind of cheating by deferring every contract so they can just massively, get way more value than they're paying for. And I remember Brunson doing that and feeling like genuinely repulsed, even though, as with a lot of things with Brunson, if he was on my team, I'd be like, you're the coolest guy ever for doing that. But I was complaining to a Knicks friend of mine, and he clarified this issue for me at least a full year ago, where he was like, Brunson is a Murray Hill guy who went to Villanova. He doesn't need that extra X million dollars because his taste is, and he wants to wear like vineyard vines, he doesn't need Rick. And I think one thing I do want to say in defense of Brunson, because I was particularly mean to him because he's the one who bothers me the most. Like, if that isn't clear.
You also hate the Knicks, too.
I fucking hate the Knicks, and so I need to, like, kind of be upfront about my priors. But I think Brunson leads into another interesting conversation where a really salient piece of feedback I got from a few people was this crisis does not relate to all NBA players, but to the extent it does, it specifically is because the level of professionalization that leads you to the NBA now is such that you are on this path from such an early age, you're treated like a star from such an early age, and you are making moves in preparation to give yourself that star pedigree, which necessarily requires imitating greats and eliminating risk and making yourself as marketable as possible. Which is something I'm receptive to. I think I'd go so far as to co-sign it. And so I do think what might separate Brunson is what multiple people named as like the fact that he was not always on this star path. That being said, the pushback I'd give is like neither were Shea and Tyrese. We're not talking about the first pick in any of these examples here. I do think the level of professionalization kind of is going to infiltrate at basically any level because of how fucking hard it is to make the NBA. And I think that brings up the final interesting thing that I got in response to this, which again, I fully co-sign, which is the class component of all this. Like a lot of mourning the lack of idiosyncrasies among NBA players, it can map on more broadly to things like accents in America disappearing because everyone's looking at fucking TikTok, but also specifically that as the path to the league gets more professionalized, it is increasingly being cultivated by, the players are upper middle class to upper class. Just their pedigree is different, their cultural touchstones are different, and they are earlier and more often having the interesting parts of their personality sanded off because of these like middle class sensibilities, which is why basically everyone seems to agree that Ant is kind of cool. And I don't think it's a mistake that Ant grew up in the American South, where there are still like accents and turns of phrase, and there is kind of this like cultural energy that you don't have in fucking Connecticut or Delaware or whatever. And that Ant isn't from this like upper class background, right? Where Ant is able to bring a level of authenticity because at some level he doesn't have this like bourgeois, ego pressing upon him.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And like, you can sort of see like there's both the aesthetic and the class element of like why people sort of yearn for Ant as this like Jordan replacement. Totally, because like Kobe also grew up fucking rich. Like he was born in Italy and his like dad was like, I guess he was born in Philly, but his dad was like a pro player and stuff. And I was thinking about the Thompson twins as like the way to sort of resolve that tension, because like they grew up with like a psycho AAU dad who like raised them to be basketball players since they were like 4 or 5 years old. Like we've talked about what their middle names are like 100 times on the show.
Excellent. I repeat that every time I've had like half a beer. Like
It's so good.
whomever is nearest to me, I'm just like, yo, you know the Thompson twins? My girlfriend like fucking hates it.
Anyone I know who's like about to have a child or something, I'm like, there's some really interesting names. But I guess my point there is that like they represent sort of like a success of the sort of professionalized from a very young age path to the NBA, except they aren't like anyone else. Like they aren't these like brand bots. They're sort of just like people. I mean, people talk about them as like aliens all the time. Like they just like legitimately do move different. And I think the thing I sort of like about that is that like their games and their very like unique, odd physicality sort of do at the end of the day make me think that like the basketball element of it all still does matter. It's not just totally denatured from like what happens on the court. And as one of these people who's like, oh, the OKC Pacers final is going to be great. Like that makes me sort of hopeful.
Absolutely.
No,
Also, I just found this mellow ice cream,
yeah.
pink, yellow, and green vape in my desk. So
Absolutely.
He still
locked
got
in.
it.
Guys, just because I know this isn't a video podcast, it was a Flume, not to be confused with an elf bar or a geek bar.
all of which Ak is wielding right now.
Yeah.
And like twiddling like Chris Moneymaker twiddling a
Yeah.
coin. I want to talk a little bit about the where the funny places you've seen this piece go. Give me a few. Give me like because you've given some of the good, fair, or like thoughtful responses. Who are some funny people who have engaged with it, and what are some dumbass comments that you've received? Because I was scrolling a little bit through some of the quote tweets at one point and saw one guy like just spazzing like,
dude, I promised myself I wasn't going to talk about that guy, but
maybe are we thinking about because I
we are
scrolled
talking
a
about the
little
same
bit.
guy.
Okay,
We're talking about the same guy. If he's listening, then more credit to him. That is a guy who I was later informed through the people he reply guys most often, namely the ball guys. That is a guy who is Indian, grew up in India, lives in India, who has learned about American culture exclusively through NBA Twitter memes. And who I think felt
sorry.
Fascinating
felt
type
very
of guy.
offended by I think a critique of people who have learned their lives through memes as lame. And so there's been kind of this like uninterrupted over the last 7 days, for lack of a better word, barrage of vitriol. But I would say my favorite one that I got from him was accusations that I was crying into my Pabst Blue.
That's good.
Because, of course, like AI missing up the fingers, he doesn't know that it's called Pabst Blue Ribbon. And so it's this kind of like beautiful accusation of me being a hipster beyond the pale from someone who has never been here. I liked that one. I think the most famous person, I mean, it's gotta be the Pablo Torre show, and I think we're gonna get into the lore there, but I was tickled silly that I got Mina Kimes to say Zinternet.
Internet, yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I also love just like it took them all 30 seconds to clock that I was white.
I had that thought too.
I was just like, I mean, you know what? Like better that I don't get ever accused of baiting in any meaningful sense, but I love how immediately that scans.
Oh, I have a brief follow-up. I said I told you a couple weeks ago that Jay Kang texted me and said, "Who is Ox Sportello?" And he asked how old you were, and I said it, and he didn't reply to that. So unclear whether you, because I think he is one of these like miscellaneous unks who shot that poison.
Oh yes,
and so,
poison was shot.
yeah, I think he wanted to see if you were of his cohort or like. I think he probably wanted to hear that you were like 22, which in a couple of years you'll get there, so that he could say like, "Look, I'm right. Like the youth are with me."
Yeah. I think I'm a tweener, and I do think it.
No cap.
I was cast as the wrong side of the millennial divide this time, but I don't know. In general, it was very cool. I joked about this earlier, but like the unks love Free Darko. Free Darko is their poison, and to the extent that we can keep feeding the unks with just kind of like goofy, rambling basket blogs. Oh, I think, all right, here's the final thing I wanted to say about the reach is like, the unks loving Free Darko so much illustrates such a fascinating point to me, which is like, Miles Brown said this. He was very gracious in sharing it as well to his extremely large followership, who largely had good things to say. But he was basically like, this used to happen all the time. Like, this just used to be what we had. And I know, Patrick, you joked about it, I think on the Liz episode, about how, like, a blog about Tyler Hero would start with this, like, just, you know, like freewheeling, bespoke introduction that has absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And I think there's just been a generational, like, we have functionally lost recipes on that front.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating to me how resistant younger people are to the concept of a blog, where it's like almost by virtue of something having circulated, it must be like a capital P piece or an essay or worse yet, journalism, right? Like there's this kind of notion that like if something has reached my timeline, it must necessarily be legible to me the same way that like a big piece from like New York Magazine would or something. And they
see the golden toilet logo and see the golden part, not
exactly.
the toilet part.
Yeah. They're looking at the wrong part of the logo. But like, I do think there is this kind of like, the mode that everyone aspires to right now is essay, right? Like essay is in vogue. And I think to the extent that we can bend this thing back towards blog, I think everyone would feel a lot more, I don't know, I think it would inject a nice life into the discourse that it's currently lacking.
I want to throw a theory related to this that actually ends optimistically, which is that I feel like in this original blog sharing, people posting their links on Twitter, like that kind of like, there was that that was the Garden of Eden, right? And then there was this first time where that cohort of people were called a type of guy or a caricature of themselves, and people became like the type of MFer who shares a Vice link, and that became ingrained as a kind of aesthetic shorthanded way to like bully this hipster type.
Sure.
Yeah. Like Pabst Blue, yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. Like this sort of Pabst Blue, Williamsburg, whatever. And
words in bio. Yeah.
Yes. Hit retweet. Exactly. Because that was the first time any of these people had happened to them, and they're like 30 and getting like bullied online by strangers for the first time in the history of the universe, there was a serious backlash to any of that. Like, even if I am a kombucha drinking, blog reading, Williamsburg wave 1.0 gentrifier, like I am not going to act like that online. And that means bending my aesthetic away from sharing articles. And that used to be, or sharing my thoughts, or kind of like being like, oh, I read this New Yorker piece of this esoteric New Yorker piece, and you guys should too, because I like it. Like that became like a passé part of the digital performance. And that there was a while where there was kind of like running on Wile E. Coyote air, where like there was still enough people doing it that if you posted something that it could, and it was good, it could still get in front of the right people. With this like link throttling and everything, it is now, if you do not actively share it and send it to people, they will not see it. And
hell no, yeah.
What I like though, and what I am seeing in myself and in some of my friends, is that I think people are returning to a culture of sharing links. And it might not be posting on Twitter or posting in the same way, but I am seeing links for articles fly around way more. Like, you should read this, give this a look. Like, this is a good writer. Like, in a way that, again, I do think was sort of like trained out of aspiring. I was probably on the younger end of this, but I would see those early people and be like, oh, like, I don't want to be like tweeting out a Vice link to my 200 followers. Like, that's kind of corny. But now I'm like, I wish I had. But that's the tribulations of being young. Yeah. It was probably your Vice link. Like,
I think the best critique that I haven't gotten yet would have been that I am I'm basically just doing Tatum, but my Kobe is like
David Roth.
Yeah, it's a dude who wrote for Grantland and never got health insurance.
Harry, I think that's a really good point. And like, I was one of those guys, and like that's my favorite. Like that's like why I like became a writer, is literally because I liked being on Twitter and like reading and sharing links, and like that. I think that ethos is like I do feel like it's coming back, because I think enough people got like famous enough that they had to like think about this in like a sort of branded way. But like genuinely, what I want to do. Like if you are a famous person online, what I want to hear is like that you liked this New Yorker article or whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly, yeah. And blah, 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 like crisis of tastemakers, algorithms, like, this is how you fight. This is like your small role in fighting back.
Yes. What I will say, though, to dish, without naming names, is that the same way that it's, I think it's just like undeniably swag and great to tip well, I noticed that it was the people who have, for better or worse, made it the most online, who are the most generous specifically with their money. And again, without naming names, I would just say that I think there's some survivor's guilt among the people who have made it, where it's like, damn, shit is barren right now, but like I will swing you $50 for the annual tier. And like whatever it's from, whether it's guilt or genuine enthusiasm about the work, it is appreciated.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm honestly, you deserve it. You're a good writer. And I'm not just saying that because we owe you like thousands of dollars
in unpaid,
both legal and middle school, after school care fees. But like, you know, co-parenting's not easy, but we'll get there.
All right, let me get you a quick. Okay, I'll give you, because let's talk about this Pablo Torre finds out episode, because they discussed your piece. It was great. I thought there were a few. They took it obviously in a different direction than we did, kind of, and started talking about like what makes athletes cool, et cetera. A lot of the stuff we covered. The one thing that I thought was interesting, that I don't exactly know if it. I'm a little bit hesitant to bring this up because we're not going to have time to fully flesh it out, but I will anyway, because the rough draft, good faith interpretation of indie podcasts that we're all doing here, but is the like that there's a there's like a tremendous amount of women's athletes who are in a different kind of like have a different relationship to all of this, that has to do with like has to do with just like the W's history in popular culture and kind of being a bit more of a niche sport and how people would cater to that. But then it also has to do with like the way women in general interact with Instagram and digital performance in general. And so David Dennis brought up Asia Wilson, who I think is a good example of like, she is the only like half-baked thought I have is I do think there is some optimism when you look at a lot of the women athletes, or some specifically talking about the WNBA, because they are overexposed, or they are exposed at the very least. They are out here tweeting and posting on Instagram and stuff and going on podcasts. But there is a much more like, it's just less corny. Like they're way more able to, like Natasha Cloud does like an Instagram series every day where she like looks at Stewie's bag of the day and like does this really funny. And she's just like, she has aura in a way. And so, but she's overexposed. She's not being this sort of recluse non-poster. She's posting all the time. So
I was thinking about this with like the WNBA, the phenomenon of like WNBA tunnel fit picks being like universally beloved, but like taken very seriously by like the players and fans. Like it really matters. It feels like it matters in a way. And like people take their outfits so seriously. And I think one of the reasons why is like the W's sort of internal culture is like much gayer and much more like focused on style as like saying something, where like, I think a Shea or a Halliburton or whatever, it's just like, here I am, I look cool. But like, also you don't want to be seen as like trying too hard, because there still are these like old, like Jordan-y vestiges of like, oh, if you wear a mesh shirt to a playoff game, like you're unserious. And there's like this real like kind of baked in homophobia.
Absolutely.
Like there's that one tweet where it's like the way people talk about Kat is because of this.
Oh, yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's great in the W that like you can have this level of like people accept that there's a level of like playfulness and fun that doesn't detract from them as like competitors and athletes. And I think that's just such a much more mature way to think about it.
Yeah. I also think like something that's fascinating with the W right now is like it's at the moment of exposure where one's star value is not necessarily correlated to like one's star value in the like Instagram public perception sense of the word is not as correlated to their on-court production as in the case of the NBA, like it kind of necessarily is. And I, of course, I'm talking about the tweet that I sent you guys where it's like Caitlyn versus Angel Reese is like if Kobe was beefing with Marcin Gortat. But like it is cool that like I think Angel's very cool. And I don't think her style of play is the coolest. Like, I don't think spamming rebounds is, like, something I would necessarily think of as, like, swag. You know, she's like Reggie Evans. But she's fucking cool. And I do think that the stars of the WNBA are, like, somewhat liberated from the strictures of, like, also being an MVP candidate, such that, like, the coolest personalities are allowed to rise to the top in a way that, like, in the NBA, if someone's really cool, but, like, a seventh man, probably only their fan base is going to know that person's cool.
Right. Yeah, that's like, are you familiar with Nika Mule or whatever? She went to UConn. She got drafted by the Storm and like has incredible fits and is like she has 1 for 14 in her career. She has made 1 bucket because of like injuries. And the Storm are really good. But like she is like very famous and like has not basically played in the WNBA yet. And like, that's awesome. Her style is really cool. Like she gets like tremendous fits off and it is cool that a person like that can exist. So,
yeah.
Though there is, I know you guys aren't saying this, but there's the dark side of that is that like, if you are like a pretty good WNBA basketball player, but you happen to be white, your like shit is going to pop off. Whereas if you're like, I do think like the kind of like, there are like 11 all NBA women's basketball players, you know, like Jewel Lloyd as an example, or Jackie Young, who have just been like cooking forever, but don't get the, Instagram marketing Nike dollars that some other people do.
You know what Jewel Lloyd was doing last week? She was talking at the fucking Bitcoin conference.
Get the fuck out of here.
She was the one active athlete. I think the one active athlete who was there. And like her season is going on right now. Yeah, she was there.
Oh man.
She was. Okay, I saw Tristan Thompson show up. I saw Scottie Pippen eating dinner with his sunglasses on once. I think those were the only... Are you sure with
Scottie Pippen it wasn't like an android that he loaned out to the
no Spencer Dinwiddie?
Oh, I know, unfortunately. You would think that he would... He's a true believer.
He's got to be mad at his... You know how like who was a basketball player who like cost himself... Like sometimes if you're just become a free agent in the wrong year, you really cost yourself a lot of money.
Yeah.
That happened. Spencer Dinwiddie has had the opposite happen with his dollars, where he like continuously is a free agent at the right time, where he gets these like $80 million contracts, but is also continuously putting his money in Bitcoin when it tanks. So like he's gonna end up with the net earnings of of Kent Bazemore basically, but has somehow made like $250 million USD.
Yeah. He's gonna be the same way that AI just keeps showing up to events because of his gambling debt. Like Dinwiddie's the first guy who's ever just career earnings was rug pulled. Like.
Like God,
why truly a man for his time. Shout out to him.
Show up to the big 3 and the number 1 draft in a full Bored Ape costume. I thought he was still in the NBA. No, we're talking about. Just a final close the loop. Pablo Torre found the essay. We already teased you foreshadowed more than you know about the Jay Kang's pull in this industry, because basically I was like, how did this come on? I texted the producers. All the producers were like, that was all Pablo. And I texted Pablo and he was just like, what did he say? He said, first of all, feel free to say I'm officially a fan of his writing. Saw the piece on Twitter, retweeted by a number of people I follow who all seem to be talking about it. Not so much anymore. I know I discussed it with Jay Kang, Ben Dietrich, and Andrew Kuo over text. So
Respect.
you've kind of you shot out of the dark forest into the cozy web, onto podcasts. Soon, maybe by the time this episode drops, there'll be a short form video of a 17-year-old reacting to you.
Absolutely. Lowe's going to hear it. And
then you'll get Me Too.
I think
The final.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm going to be... fuck, I was gonna make some stupid joke, but I think some lore I will dish for you is that Pablo and I are we share an alma mater, high school, and it is just like a tremendously nerdy all boys school in Manhattan. And if the broader basketball internet was aware that like the war on cool in the NBA was being waged by these two like Revenge of the Nerds style, like I speak not for Pablo but for myself, just like constitutionally kind of a cock. Like I think people would be sick to their stomach. So I think it's for the best that no one knows that. But if you've listened an hour in, you get that.
I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
let's. Can we talk crypto, or where are you at, Patrick? We're at an hour.
Yeah, I mean, so I was in
really
Vegas
curious about it. So
all last week for
cannot
the
believe
Bitcoin
this.
conference. Yeah, and I was like, basically, I was going in with a fairly, I'm not going to say an open mind because I'm like a longtime hater of this stuff. Like, to apply for a press pass, you have to like email a bunch of clips, and all the headlines are just like, this is a scam for stupid people and stuff, and they accepted me. It was at the Venetian all last week.
Oh wow.
Yes, and there was an official crypto conference discount, which even after that made the hotel rooms 4 times as expensive as the piece of shit Treasure Island across the street. And so as a small business owner, that's where I stayed, which instantly put me into like broke boys category of the conference. I would say, I mean, I suffered immense psychic damage, as I told you guys, like just exposing myself to the full bore of like the arguments for Bitcoin, the extent to which they took it, and like the extent to which it is like sort of a Trump project now. That was like the reason I was going in, is like JD Vance spoke. Eric, I saw Dunn Jr. talk twice. Eric Trump was also there. There was like this I think he's a former Yale college football player who's now like Trump's like executive advisor on digital assets. And he's my age. Like he's like 17. Brian Johnson was there. Eric Adams was there. I don't want to give too much away about the story because I just filed like 5,000 words with my editor last night. I needed to just get it out of me. But one of the most interesting things was like how differently speakers talked on like the first day, which is like for the industry people. Like that's when all the politicians and like real money makers were there. And then how they talked when like the suckers all showed up. Because like one of the most interesting sort of like tensions of Bitcoin is that it is inherently this like competitive dynamic. It's like if you make money, someone else loses money. I don't know if that's zero sum or less or whatever. Like I studied geology in college. I don't know that shit. But my point is like when they were talking on day one, it was a lot of like just like very boring industry talk. Like here's how we can use stable coins to like reassert dollar dominance and, you know, the big exchanges. Like we should get Bitcoin treasuries buying in at this rate. And then do you guys know who Michael Saylor is?
I actually do. Yeah.
He's like the Bitcoin Pope.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking of somebody else.
He closed out. Well, he spoke right before Ross Ulbricht, which is there's a funny thing there. But he closed out by giving his like 21 principles of like Bitcoin accumulation. And that made me feel so rotten because he was basically saying like Bitcoin represents half of everything. And if we do our jobs and this like totally eats the regular financial system, everyone who buys in will be tremendously wealthy. And I was just thinking like, what happens to like the other half? And he said this and everyone went crazy. He said they will be exited from the gene pool.
Jesus.
Which is like a crazy thing to say. So we had been like going to parties, like actually at one of the VIP parties, there was a bathroom attendant offering Zins in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
No way.
That was so, and then yeah, my you guys know Jacob Silverman, the crypto guy, anti-crypto guy. He was there with me. He tried his Zin for the first time, coffee flavored for some reason. Said it made him feel bad. So
hell yeah. No, the familiar lip burn followed by the intense wave of nausea.
yeah, but it was. it was not a good time, but it was like an intense time. Like it was a real strong experience, and I'm glad I went, and I hope people like the story that I'll have ended up writing.
I can't wait to read it. I think like to your point about exiting the gene pool, like the most uncanny thing to me as someone, I guess not the most uncanny thing, there's a lot, but as someone who just kind of passively observes this from the outside, is how like anytime there's any indication of like geopolitical instability or just like a downgraded trust in like the processes of the world as we know it, the refrain is buy Bitcoin from these people, that like Bitcoin is like positioned as a hedge against like the world as we know it, but not in like a techno-futurist way, like very explicitly as like a bunker way.
Yes.
And like watching that kind of play out recently as like Bitcoin seemed, after the initial shock of Liberation Day, like kind of less tethered to the fate of the US economy than it ever previously had. Like it kind of like no longer looking like 6 tech stocks in a trench coat and starting to resemble something else. It's just like fucking unsettling.
Yeah, that's basically the pitch of like the Trump alliance, because it is a fundamentally like uneasy alliance. Like like Vance, Trump, everyone, the same page they were all on was like, we're going to regulate stable coins, and then basically like by allowing people to buy Tether, that'll force Tether to buy a bunch of US treasuries, yada, 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 prop up the dollar, which is like, Saylor doesn't give a fuck about that. He, at one point in his talk, he was like, one of his points was immigration. And he was basically just like, you guys should all move to like El Salvador and Panama, because then you can buy more Bitcoin without like having to worry about running afoul of regulators. And like that alliance is, I think, fundamentally an uneasy one. Mm-hmm. Like Eric Trump also said, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, to like explain why they got in bed with Bitcoin.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a bar.
That's
right
how I
there.
started rooting for Pascal Siakam.
It was the most fun I had was definitely watching the playoffs with everyone, like going to the sports book and like playing video poker and just like asking, just like, it was fun just like going up to anyone who was there and be like, what's your deal? Why are you here? And yeah, it was a crazy, I'm very happy to be home, but yeah, it was a crazy time.
I think like there's a real parallel between the just, because I have in fact been to the Venetian, and the part of the Venetian, for those who haven't had the misfortune of being there, it is quite literally a recreation of Venice. It is the most uncanny place you'll ever be in. They like chime in birds twittering, and there's these like totally chlorinated, like it's definitely standing in there is worse for you than hitting a vape. Like this completely chlorinated like canal system and fake storefronts, and it's basically like a Renaissance fair, but for the actual place in the world, Venice.
Yeah.
There's some parallel there, I think, between the aura farming crisis and the layout of the Venetian and this copy of a copy bullshit of Venice being this place that is in fact just disappearing from the world. It's a bit too heady for an hour 10 into a podcast, but I'd be remiss not to mention it.
Well, there's a whole, I have a whole riff in the thing about the like bustedness of like the aesthetics and sort of culture of the Bitcoin world, because there's this like, at first blush, you see like they had like a museum with all this art, and it was just like a lot of like very self-consciously AI looking shit, like on purpose.
Yeah.
And a lot of like Pepe stuff, and a lot of, I mean, your classic like Rothschildy, like conspiratorial elites that may have just had the word like Jewish written over it in like huge letters, like shit like that. But like I something I sort of came to is that like, that is like the shittiness is not incidental. Like they actually like this like busted, janky, like AI streamlined aesthetic, because it represents like a break from the aesthetic and cultural norms of like the world as it exists already, and like accomplishes their goal of sort of this like totalizing different vision. And that was like not a fun conclusion to come to, but that's like where I landed.
Yeah, it is a taunt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I see this. There's so many AI tools that purport to help people make podcasts, and they all produce this same like basically enshittified version of it, where you're like the captions look stupid and are spelled wrong and blah blah blah, and like but it's almost like, maybe this is taking it too far, but like if you're already going for bottom of the barrel aesthetic, and that's what you're selling is like a bottom of the barrel, completely dog shit aesthetic. You don't need to do the rug pull of Uber where you raise the prices and whatever. Like it's already there. Like you're there. You don't need to have Zerp sticker shock. Like it's bad from the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. And like to that end, I was sort of surprised by the composition of the press corps, and I probably shouldn't have been, where there was like, I hung out with 3 other like normal style journalists, and we like all had a very good time together. But like most of the rest of the media zone was like Bitcoin podcasters, like Rumble streamers, like Newsmax anchors, just like guys in shiny Trump jackets. Like it was like, they have their own sort of like internally incoherent, but like complete media ecosystem of like weirdos and freaks and stuff, all of whom view content as like basically an end to itself. Like there's no real thought of like artistic value or ambition. It's just like, this is a means to an end. This like accomplishes business goals, both for myself and for Bitcoin more broadly. And so that was another sort of like vector of psychic damage that I experienced.
All right, to get us out of here, I asked you guys to come up with 2 or 3 possible optimistically cool basketball players that can maybe lead us into the brave new era of cool basketball players. I will give you mine, and then I want to hear yours.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Number 1, second team learns how to be a point guard, Jalen Green. I think if Jalen Green can be the biggest problem in Jalen Green's game right now is he sucks. If he could,
It's true.
That was my critique in the V's. He's just bad.
Yeah. No, you guys said the same thing. If he this is what made me think of it, is because if he has a lot of like innate swag, he's doing his own thing. He is actually to some degree taking aesthetic risks, to the degree that painting your fingernails is an aesthetic risk. He wiles out in his personal life. He checks out all the boxes. He just like has a kind of game that reads as a little tryhardy or like uncool, because missing a lot of jump shots is not that cool. Next, this one's I'm the most bullish on, which is Maryland power forward Derek Queen.
Oh, I love this.
If this
American
guy
Jokic
is a swag demon. He is so fucking cool, and like
he has the Baltimore accent. Accents play a big fucking role.
He's got the Baltimore accent. I've watched like 2 games. I'm telling you, he has it. If he can get starting minutes, he is so cool. He's got amazing footwork. He's like plays like nobody else. Well, I mean, he plays like
awesome.
Al Jefferson, but he like plays like nobody else you're seeing today.
I want this to be right, because there's like a not insignificant chance he's a net. But he's got to do something about the sleeves, is the only thing I'll say. It's really fat kid in the pool energy, but aside from that, I am comfortable co-signing this.
Do you guys think big men can be cool?
It's much harder. It's much harder, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's possible, but like in the same way that like you can read the professionalization as like this sort of, I don't want to use the word vector again, but it's the only one I can think of, vector of uncool. I think also like big guys tend to be less cool because their path to the NBA is sort of deterministic. Because like if you are, I think it's like, I don't know, 40% of anyone who's over been 7 feet has played in the NBA. That stat is totally wrong, but it's something like that.
It's one of those
like that.
Yeah, where it's like you didn't have to grind in the same way.
I think the path to big men being cool is like almost your alienation becomes so exaggerated by virtue of your height that the professionalization's also there, but also there's the chance that you fall into like the lonely stoner seems to free himself at night syndrome, where like you are forced to kind of get out of the mud personality wise and like make it pop. I guess historically speaking, there aren't that many cool big men, but like I think we've just been optimized out of like the swaggy power 4. Like I think like I don't know.
No. I mean, Shaq is a great example of what you're talking about. Shaq is one of the coolest. Like,
yeah, Shaq's fucking cool.
But he might, whatever. And then my last one is, you guys know Jordan Poole is only 25 years old. If Jordan Poole can put it together on the court, because all he needs is a little bit of greatness. He is so swaggy. He is so
think you're
good.
onto something.
He is a walking genuine aura farmer, like organic,
like honest,
regenerative,
like yeoman,
honest. Local.
He's taking the
union
permaculture
aura farmer.
courses. Yeah.
He
one of
just
those, like the urban aura farmers and like a Brooklyn rooftop. Like
he's
got
like
the aquaponic stack. Dude, I actually think that's a really good one because he was like kind of decent last year. The Wizards had like a fake Mickey Mouse March like moment of competence, and I was watching weird. I don't know why I was doing this, but like Bub Carrington and Alex Sarr were like kind of out there doing stuff, and you could see a version of this team that like gets decent, and then Poole, as like Draymond retires, Poole has this like mid-career renaissance, and everyone's like, it was sort of in retrospect unfair that we all thought he sucked because he got punched. Like, I could see the redemption arc. I hope it happens.
All right, you guys have any?
Yeah, I have a few that we kind of covered already, so I don't want to dedicate too much time to it. Briefly, before I get into that, though, particularly rooting for Jalen Green and Derek Queen on your Rex, because something that has really blackpilled me recently about basketball Twitter is this just kind of like, for lack of a better word, this like seething kind of almost incel-coded rage that I see among nominally smart people, where there's like, I feel like a defining characteristic of basketball Twitter, at least over the last year on my timeline, has been just like smug superiority, right? And it manifests itself in the basically shaping your personality around hating certain players who like by the numbers aren't good necessarily, but also I think it's like a mode of thought that like misunderstands what makes basketball cool, kind of like what you guys were talking about with Ellen with the award stuff. And I think Jalen Green's like the primary example of that. Like all these nerds fucking hate Jalen Green. They have Jalen Green derangement syndrome. Every time the Rockets lost a game, it was like, Jalen Green is the worst guy ever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like sick of it, and I want him to level up and be cool, if for no other reason than to prove these guys wrong. Kind of like what Cade did, even though I don't think Cade's necessary. I don't know. I have no opinion on Cade's swag or lack thereof.
He's number one on my list, actually.
Oh, fuck yeah. All right, so briefly, my list, because I want to get to Cade. I have the Thompsons. I think the Thompsons are the potential coolest in like this autistic future we have, where everyone's just like incredibly maximized, and like what makes them cool is the function rather than form. Jared McCain I have, because again I want to beat the hating millennial allegations. I think McCain is genuinely cool. I think the risks he takes are cool. I think that he can be a star, and I think he's awesome. And then this is going to get me a lot of hate, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say I love my Hornets. I love LaMelo, even though he's not cool, list. But
I love LaMelo.
He's this chaos agent, but who I really want to highlight here in the spirit of idiosyncrasies is Brandon Miller. Because
dude, he was good before he got hurt.
He's good. He's a bucket, which is very important on your path to being cool. But I always return to the interview on Media Day where he claims that, and I quote, Paul George is his GOAT of basketball, because he speaks kind of to like, in a world where we've gotten accustomed to humans being really good at processing information and AI being the ones who mess up, he's this vision of this kind of like weird possibility whereby humans trained on computers end up being fundamentally wrong, but the nature of their incorrectness is inherently human and life affirming. For instance, him thinking Paul George is his GOAT of basketball, because there's no logical argument that Paul George was ever even the best player in any given year. Yeah. But him being your GOAT of basketball is so intuitively sound to me that I think Miller, like basically I don't think Miller's inherently cool yet. I know he's got legal trouble, but whatever, that's kind of cool. I think he has the bare bones to not be a follower though, right? Like I think he's capable of surprising you.
And that team is about to draft Ace Bailey too, which is going to make them one of the funniest basketball teams of all time. So Cade was my number one. The logic there is that he's like really good. Like he made All NBA, so he's going to be relevant in like basically every conversation.
I like that he doesn't like people too. He does seem to genuinely like not like Jalen Green.
He's a shit talker.
Yeah. He's grumpy.
And I think he basically has like Luka's game, like 90% of Luka's game. Like he's not quite the shooter, but he's like a big bully, and I think he's going to be like really good for a very long time. And I think people like that Pistons team. Like they have,
I hope so. I like
tremendous swag, and also like off the court, he kind of feels like like an old, I hate to use this phrase, but an old soul. Like he seems older than his years. He seems like there's kind of a maturity, but like not in like a lame way. Like, I don't know. I feel like that combination people will find cool, especially if he's like good for a long time. My other one, this is not going to happen, but Shaden Sharp is my pick because he's so athletic and his game is like so magnetic, and I can't speak to his swag too much. He does get the Canadian shea demerit, but like I have a sneaking suspicion that team is going to be kind of good next year. And like I was such a Scoot believer coming in, but like, man, that guy is not good, unfortunately. If he turns it around, that'd be cool, but I don't think he has it. But Shaden is like, there's no one like Shaden.
And people are gonna want to have like a guy on the Blazers.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible that it's him.
It's not going to be Klingon with his weird ass feet. Like,
Yeah,
I think it'll have to be Shaden.
In favor of Cade's like perspectives as a cool guy is having Isaiah Stewart on that team, because he's the most charming guy in the league to me. I think it's amazing that he just like is addicted to fighting people, but I think like he adds this kind of like glitch to the Matrix that is necessarily going to keep creating memorable, iconic moments that just are not pre-scripted, right? The same way I wouldn't argue anyone on the Warriors is particularly cool, but like the same way I love Draymond, because like one thing that is not aura farming is being so addicted to fighting that you have to go to therapy. And I think Stewie's kind of got that pathology too. I think it's cool to have anger problems. And I think that Cade being in proximity to that is going to allow him to, again, ethically aura farm.
It's cool to do bad stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, Mr. Sportello, our lawyer, you have ethically aura farmed. You've ethically, I hope, farmed a lot of viewers and readers to your blog. We have been longtime fans. I hope all the new fans listen to this. I hope they go back and read your old stuff. I hope they freaking listen to your old Nothing But Respect episodes. Continue to read all that stuff. Thank you. Read the stuff that you're not posted on the blog because you're writing elsewhere. Thank you for coming. Do you have anything else to plug before we and Patrick, I know you got that piece coming out. Do you have anything else to plug?
I don't, and I think it's going to come out this week at some point, but what about you?
I can't wait to read that. I have one thing coming out soon. I think I'm allowed to say it now. That's the LA Review of Books print edition, which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things I've written, and so go on and get your print subscription if you haven't already. It's good to support, writing that doesn't have paywalls, and it's good to hold something in your hand. But aside from that, I don't know. Just going to keep plugging away at the blog. My parting words would be, at the end of the day, one thing we can all agree is very fucking cool is three roughly 30-ish white guys talking about cool. And for you two, I am forever grateful.
Of course. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.